Hi, my name is Adam Hamilton. I'm the senior pastor of the Church of the Resurrection in the Kansas City area. I'm also the host of this podcast, Making Sense of Faith. And I'm coming to you from Bristol, England, on the southwest coast of England. And this is both a live feed on Facebook, but also my podcast for this week. And I'm standing in the stairway of the new room. This was a room that was built, the very first Methodist building built by John Wesley and the earliest Methodist in Bristol in 1739, June 1739. It was built to serve the needs. So Wesley had begun preaching out of doors. He'd never done that before. It was considered an uncouth kind of thing to do. But Wesley came at the insistence of his friend George Whitefield to preach out of doors to the coal miners. The coal miners couldn't pay the pew taxes to go to church. You had to pay a pew tax at the time to go to church. They couldn't pay it. They didn't feel welcome in church. They were non-religious or nominally religious people. And John Wesley and those earliest Methodists, John finally said, okay, I guess I'm going to try this. And he came out to preach here in the Bristol area. And when he preached, there were, I think, 1,000 people who came out to see him the very first time, and then 1,500 people. And pretty soon there were thousands, 3,000 people. And in the end, there was like 47,000 people who came to hear him preach over something like the first month or month and a half that he was here preaching to these coal miners. They were so hungry for faith and to know that there was a God who loved them and that they mattered. And he would preach and he would see them weeping and they'd come out of the mines. It was when they got off work, they'd come out of the mines, or coal dust all over their faces, and you could see the tears running down their faces, cutting through the coal dust. Anyway, after he saw the response, he thought, and others thought here, we need to build a room for us to have activities here. So they built this place called the New Room. And the New Room was designed for both preaching and singing. It wasn't a church because there was the Church of England, and Wesley was a priest in the Church of England. It was a preaching house, a meeting house. And so they designed this place for people to come together to preach and sing, but also they designed it to meet the needs of the community. So there was a food pantry here. There was a place to train up other pastors here. People could practice at preaching, and Wesley would critique them and help them. They provided medicines here. They provided clothing. They provided school. There was a school that started here for children who couldn't afford to go to school. Their parents couldn't afford to send them to school. So anyway, a lot of things happened here. But again, the very first building built by Methodists in the world in 1739, June 1739. So I thought I'd take upstairs. I'm going to turn the camera around and I'm just going to show you the museum that's here. Most people never make it to this museum when they come to Bristol. Most Americans don't make it to Bristol. So I thought I'd just show you, they've done a great job of trying to capture, what life was like during this period of time and things that were important to early Methodists. So, you're walking into the space, which also on the second floor was an apartment where Wesley would stay when he was in town, or other preachers could stay. But you also find exhibitions like this on the slave trade. So Bristol was the heart of the slave trade here in Africa. And the traders would go to Africa, capture Africans, sell them in America. They would bring from America cotton and other goods, sell those here in England, take the money down, and again, purchase or capture slaves in Africa. And what happened, you can see images of this here from the period. And Wesley, along with many of the early Methodists, ended up protesting slavery, writing against slavery. It was actually in this New Room, where Wesley preached in 1788 against slavery. And many of the slave traders were here and got very angry and began taking the pews and breaking them apart while he was preaching. Anyway, lots of great exhibits here. I'm not going to go over all of these. I want to quickly take you through them. Leaders in the Methodist Church of Great Britain. But you begin seeing like this exhibition, which focuses on Wesley and his belief in the care of creation, and that we were meant to be stewards of the world around us. And so anyway, lots of interesting exhibitions here. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, Charles Wesley, the great hymn writer and co-founder of Methodism, and his hymns focusing on the care of creation and God as the creator and our role in taking care of it. Anyway, lots of interesting exhibitions here. The role of women in early Methodism and how that continued, so that in America it took a long time, but finally in the 1950s, women were ordained or allowed to be ordained. And we have lots of amazing female preachers across the denomination. John Wesley's opposition to slavery is mentioned here and outlined here. Thoughts on slavery. As we come into this room, an exhibition about Charles Wesley. Charles Wesley's home is just up the street, and we've toured that. And Charles Wesley, again, composing over 6,000 hymns. for the church, trying to take theology, there he is right there, taking theology and put it to music in a way that people could remember. And so the theology was memorized. It was put into their hearts by virtue of hymns. And that's the power of singing hymns, as you take faith and you put it into poetry and music, and you can remember it. There's Charles again in this image, and other of the great old Methodist preachers. But I want to take you into this room. This was the apartment for John Wesley when he stayed here in Bristol. Wesley died in 1791. So starting in 1739, he was, he would stay here when in Bristol. This is some of his furniture that was here. His study chair, some of the hymnals over here, and other books that Wesley wrote. Just some really cool things in here. But I want to take you in here. And an image of John Wesley. This was one of his preaching gowns here, which was pretty cool. And this was the bed that he slept in. And when he wasn't here, other preachers, visiting preachers, could sleep here and stay in this apartment. But this was his apartment. There were other quarters up here. The very old building creaks when you walk through it. This was where the preachers would gather. They'd have their meetings here around a table like this, maybe this very table, I'm not certain. And when he was critiquing preachers, so he would come up here and allow, they had a lot of lay preachers, and the lay preachers would be preaching from the pulpit down there. I don't know if you can see that or not. And they would open up this window. So Wesley was trying not to intimidate them, I suppose. He would stand up here and he would listen through the window, and he would then take notes and offer advice and help for those lay preachers learning how to preach. Lots of other things that are in here, celebrating. Some of them belong to the Wesleys. I love this, John Wesley's advice on how to preach. And so he gives all of these rules, 12 rules, and then you find underneath here 4 of the rules that Wesley routinely broke. So he said, don't preach more than twice a day during the week or 3 times on Sunday. And then he often preached 4 to 5 times per day. And there's, preach on simple texts, but he often chose very complicated texts. Don't divert from your text, or something like that. Keep it simple. But he diverted from his text and his sermons. So for those of you who attend Church of the Resurrection and think I preached too long, his sermons were known to have lasted up to 2 hours, and on one occasion 3 hours. So be grateful that yours are only 37 minutes or 35 minutes at Church of the Resurrection. Images of various Anglican clergymen and others who were part of that early Methodist movement. And you can see he was not doing this alone. He had a whole host of other people who were helping him. And I will show you back through here. Let's see. This is interesting too. The emphasis on education, which we're going to talk about this weekend in worship, was known in this building because the school started in this building. And then this is the Kingswood School and Chapel that was started for minors' children and for others who couldn't afford to go to school. And so you can see it's quite a massive school that was built during that time. And then it was used as both a preaching house or a meeting house and as a school. But this again pointed to as social service ministries. So Methodism, from its beginning, was interested not only in preaching the gospel and inviting people to come to faith in Christ, but it was also interested in helping people to know Jesus. And to know Jesus. We said that already. Not only to know Jesus, but to live out their faith with their hands, to serve God by serving other people, to close the gap between the world as it is and the world as it's supposed to be. And so, this is one of the things I remember here and this is part of what we, at Resurrection and every United Methodist church that I know is interested in not only inviting people to know Christ personally, to be delivered, rescued, saved by him, but then to say, okay, we are saved by God's grace through faith, but we're saved for good works. And we're saved to be God's instruments of healing a broken world. And so Methodists, and this is true of, I hope, every Christian, it should be true of every Christian, every church, but not all churches are thinking about, what are we doing to address the woes in our society? Often they're focused on how do we help each other in the church, but not necessarily how do we see what's broken in the world and address that. Methodists have always done that. It's just from the time we began, that was an inherent part of who we are. And so, anyway, coming to this place, today we brought in 65 young clergy from across America and about 15 spouses and others. And last week I had 36 young adults and youth from Church of the Resurrection here. And just remembering this is who we are. And the reality is that, especially the clergy, they know this because every one of their churches is trying to say, how can we help the world look more like the kingdom of God because we were here? And at Church of the Resurrection, we continue this legacy. We have our partnership with 11 or 12 elementary schools in low-income communities in Kansas City. And and our work in providing school supplies for, 2,000 children, something like that, making sure that kids have beds to sleep in. We're the second largest source of food in the Kansas City area. We are involved in prison ministry. We're involved in, just such a wide array of ministries in Kansas City, and then going into other parts of the world, providing clean drinking water and providing schools and medical clinics and all kinds of other things. Because that's what it means to be a follower of Christ. Jesus said, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me, sick and you visited me, and in prison you visited me, and I was a stranger, an immigrant, and you welcomed me. And as much as you've done it for the least of these, you've done it for me. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a sense of what's happening in this place. This is called the New Room in Bristol. And I thought I'd go ahead and show you. I'm going to keep walking, take you downstairs. And right now, our young clergy are meeting in the main meeting hall. And as I walk by, I'm going to show you the pulpit where Wesley was preaching from when he came here and others preached from, what we could see out the window just a moment ago. And then you'll see a large group of young clergy gathered in the sanctuary there. And I'll tell you one more story about this place. I can't remember if I mentioned it in the sermon next weekend or not, but Wesley in 1788, he's preaching against slavery in this community that was, the hub of slavery in England. And as he's preaching, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, as he's preaching, the people get so angry with each other. They get so divided and so angry with each other, they begin picking up the pews and hitting each other with the pews and breaking them apart. Anyway, you'll have a chance to see this space as we walk downstairs. And I'm going to get quiet when we walk down so you can see the clergy. They're having a Q&A session on leadership. So I'm going to turn this around and let's head downstairs. And this has been such a great trip with these young clergy, with the last week with the young adults, this week with the young clergy. And I am so grateful at Church of the Resurrection that you support and sponsor things like this. You help make it possible for these students, for these young clergy to come here and to grow in their leadership and in their faith. So here we go. I'm going to get quiet and turn it off in just a moment. But this is the pulpit that Wesley was preaching from. They're doing a Q&A right now. All right. Well, that's a little taste of what we've been doing here in Bristol, England today. And if you can, tune in this coming weekend to worship. It'll be the second sermon in the series of sermons on Methodism and reviving our faith. And I'm going to take you here to this location. I'm going to take you to London. I'm sorry. This weekend is going to be about Oxford. And I'm going to take you to Oxford. Next weekend is going to be in London and Bristol. But we're going to have a great few weeks. If you missed last weekend's sermon, I want to encourage you to tune in. I take you to Epworth, where Wesley was born and where he was formed in his early faith. So anyway, thanks for joining me today. Tune in again to Resurrection Sermons at cor.org/worship. And you can watch last weekend's sermon in Epworth. This weekend's sermon will be in Oxford, and next weekend in Bristol and London. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Making Sense of Faith with Adam Hamilton. Do you know someone wrestling with life's biggest questions? Share this episode with them, because the more people willing to embrace the hard questions, the better. Do you want to go deeper? You can visit makingsenseoffaith.com to find the show notes and additional resources. That's also where you can sign up to get the notes and resources delivered straight to your inbox. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe and leave us a rating in your podcast player. That'll make sure that you get the latest episodes and help others find the podcast. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell to catch future episodes and videos there. Until next time, remember that your questions matter. Doubts are normal, and making sense of faith is a lifelong journey. We'll see you on the next episode of Making Sense of Faith.